Thank you to the MC because she did the tougher job of introducing everyone on stage, right? I really want to take this opportunity to thank all the founding partners of the First Movers Coalition for Food. If you go to our press release, you'll find that there are more than 25 entities, right? Both design research partners as well as companies who have taken that leap forward to leverage the power of partnership and to leverage the power of procurement. Borge alluded to this earlier when we launched the FMC for Industry 2 years ago with the US State Department. It was focused on hard-to-abate sectors, things like cement, concrete, shipping, trucking, aviation, the list goes on. That's about 40% of global emissions. And we know that food accounts for another 30%. So today, we are very, very excited to launch the First Movers Coalition for Food, right? And I'm very delighted that in addition to Danone, right, we have 5 other partners who are representing the coalition here to share their thoughts, right? They've each actually embarked in their own ways and in very big ways, sustainability, climate, nature-positive efforts. But I would like them to speak to this First Movers Coalition for Food and how they feel. Why did they decide to sign up and how they feel this could actually help contribute and help accelerate the whole transition of food systems that are nutritious, accessible and affordable with farmers, consumers at the heart of this transition, and also good for the environment, and that's restorative, regenerative for future generations as well. And I'll start off with Pilar, right, from Cargill, right? You're one of the largest commodity players in the world, right? And I would love to have you share your experience, what this means for supply chains, because you are also one of the largest traders, distributors, purchasers of agri-commodities, in addition to other commodities that you're also involved in. Pilar.
Great. Well, thank you. And first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity to join this event and to share the panel with an amazing group of panelists today. We are super excited about joining this initiative, which is very much aligned with our company's purpose to nourish the world and to do it in a safe, responsible, and sustainable way. When I think about the First Movers Coalition, to me, I think about the old African saying that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go far, you go together. So for us, the First Movers Coalition is all about joining forces, leveraging the scale, the expertise of these companies to develop more sustainable practices that will allow us to increase food production, especially now when the world needs it the most. And let me bring this back to Cargill. So for our company, again, our purpose and our mission is food security. We know that today in the world, more than 800 million people go to sleep hungry. And we think about the responsibility that we have to increase food production, to make sure that we move food from places where it is produced to places where it's needed within planetary boundaries. But we know that the food system is resilient, and we tested that post-pandemic. But there are so many challenges that we are dealing with at the moment, from climate change to food insecurity to inflation, energy independence. And it's really hard for a single company or entity or country to tackle these issues successfully. So we believe in partnerships. We believe in putting the farmer at the center of everything we do in our company. So we invest in regenerative agricultural solutions, but we do it together with companies such as PepsiCo. We got interesting investments, particularly in Europe. We also have an interesting partnership with Nestle, especially when we think about grazing practices that allow farmers to be more productive, more efficient, to do more with less, and also increasing farmer livelihoods, because we believe that if farmers are successful, we are all going to be successful in increasing food production. And again, by joining this coalition and this initiative, we're excited. We know we're going to be able to make a difference. So very excited to be here.
Thank you. And I know, Pilar, you've been a very strong champion, right? In fact, the commodity traders have actually done a lot to actually support nature-positive transitions globally.
Sure. Thank you.
I want to turn the attention to Ahmed. You're the CEO of Majid Al Fatam Group, right? And amongst all the different things that you own and operate are hypermarkets, right? So you have a strong interface with consumers, right? Can you tell us a little bit more what this would mean for your consumers, right? And how would your involvement in the whole First Movers Coalition to support more regenerative agricultural practices translate to every home and translate to purchasing and of these individual consumers?
Absolutely, and thank you for being invited to this esteemed panel. I mean, obviously, it is a critical juncture for the world, and I would say perhaps an existential juncture for the region where we operate. We operate in 60 markets around Middle East, North Africa, East Africa, and Asia. And as we try to keep the dream alive of 1.5 degrees, and perhaps for those of us who are on science-based targets well below 2 degrees, the region where COP28 is being hosted and where COP27 was hosted is heating up at twice the rate. So what we are contemplating here is 2 degrees. If we overshoot that, then we're talking about 4 degrees plus of higher average temperatures in our part of the world. And as a responsible company from the region, this is impossible to ignore. You can think about the knock-on effects on already very scarce water resources and already very limited agri-land that's available. So this is existential for us and for our customers. And while the First Mover Coalition started by focusing on hard-to-abate sectors, I think it's great now that we are now focused on the one hard-to-ignore sector, because it's 30% of emissions for sure, 70% of water consumption, but it's 100% of the nutrition of the planet, and as such, it's critical. From our perspective, that aggregation of demand is a very important signal to send across the supply chain, but it obviously starts with the customer. And if signals from the customer are not, I would say, encouraged and amplified, then we have a huge missed opportunity. And we see our role is perhaps a role of duality. On one hand, we're delighted to join the coalition, to be among the first movers to aggregate demand and send this signal across the supply chain. But we also see perhaps a more profound role for us and other retailers to actually strengthen the customer signal. So earlier this year, we have started a Choose Better campaign across all of our key stores, including the store here on site in the Blue Zone, where we clearly label all of our products, at least 2,500 key products, whether they are better for you and your health and nutrition and well-being, better for the community, as well as better for the planet. And we hope through that Choose Better campaign, we continue to nudge customers and push them. And as such, the signal that we're trying to send down the supply chain is vastly amplified. The coalition is aiming to aggregate 10 to 20 billion of demand across 4 food produce initially. We think that if we get customers to vote more sustainably with their wallets and with their feet in our stores and other stores, we can actually make that number 5-fold or 10-fold very quickly. And can we extend it to a larger set of produce? So I think retailers play perhaps a crucial link given our positioning on the supply chain. And for a region that's heating up twice as fast as the rest of the world, it is existential.
Thank you. In fact, in many of the surveys that we've looked at, about 1 in 2 are actually very pro-sustainable purchasing. And in fact, you see that percentage growing, developing as the population gets younger. So there's clearly a generational shift as well. But obviously, as the cost curve comes down, right, with more purchasing, we can actually hopefully get that transition transition accelerated. I do want to turn my attention to Mr. Abdullah, right? You're the CEO of El Marai, which is based in Saudi, right? And I hear that it is a household name for many products, right? So you have a good pulse of technologies, what's happening out there. And I'm very keen to hear your perspective, because one of the reasons for the First Movers Coalition for Food is really to encourage more upfront investment into sustainable production practices and technologies. Can you tell us more about what you're seeing and how you feel FMC for food can help to accelerate that investment upfront?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Al Marai started in Saudi Arabia, for sure, and it has its main operation in there. However, we are now have an operation in many countries, mainly in Gulf, in Egypt, in Jordan, also in Argentina, and the States as well. So our setup is somehow different than most of the dairy or food companies, basically, because we own most of the supply chain, unlike the traditional, I would say, food companies. Now, this increases the complexity of our operation and the diversity of the suppliers that we are dealing with, because we don't necessarily always get end service or end product into our operation. But at the other side, it gives us an opportunity because we have control. And us taking this leading role, I would say, into these elements, give us an opportunity to work with different partners and stakeholders in order to push for this agenda and ensure there is continuity of that sort. I would say, apart from the regular or the established sort of methods when it comes to taking care of the planet in simple terms, now we have CFC-free depots, more than 100. We have more efficient fleet, which we own. We use biofuel for our fleet in some parts, and so many things that were like established, and it became like not as much of innovations rather than commitment and then a drive. And then, in addition, I would say probably I will go to not so much tapped sort of areas. I would say it's less advanced either in the region or the globe, where you develop things related to let's say R&D. You develop talent. So we have one of the examples is an international prize for scientific research. And that is coming to a new version. It's been there now for 15 years. The new version will be launched next year. And we believe this will drive a lot of the research into the sector. We are developing talent, I would say, on another angle, where we bring youth to the industry who are equipped into the sustainable sort of acts, if you wish, in that regard. We have a prize also for vets, people who are doing research on the animal welfare side. I would say on the other element, which is again, I would say, rarely tapped into, and I always encourage, is the efficient operation. Because yes, you could do all these sort of initiatives, fine, then what else we need to do? I think when we look at efficiency, we are bringing almost all stakeholders in there, because everyone wins. And when you talk to customers, they're happy because it's not going to be more expensive. Actually, it will be more price attractive. When you talk to shareholders, they're happier because you're generating profit. And I'll give you examples of efficiencies. If I take the dairy category in our business, we have increased the yield per cow more than 45% than the international yield. And for us, that is very, very important. Having in mind also all the animal welfare, we do take care of the herds we have. We have about 200,000. And they live in a very nice environment, air-conditioned, and very well taken care of. I look at poultry business. The feed conversion rate, we are breaking records every now and then. And this reduces the pressure in the entire infrastructure and logistics, because you're producing more. Now, we own grandparents, we own parents, and we own the broilers. And in that sort of chain, there is an efficiency that increases in every stage or generation. When you look at these opportunities put together, you ensure one key thing, which is basically, I would say, continuity of food supply, which is very critical. Food security is becoming now a concern to most of the stakeholders. Also, we ensure very high quality, and it's high quality and consistent compliance to a standard that we set very, very high. And at the end of the day, you bring that into, I would say, affordable prices to the consumers.
Thank you. I wanted to flag a nice data point here in case you're not quite wowed by this initiative, which is that the first phase of the First Movers Coalition will focus on rice, it will focus on dairy, beef cattle, and row crops. And together, this account for 50% of global emissions in the agri-food sector. Right, so we're going into specifics, right? And I wanted to mention this because I think Mr. Ahmad highlighted the need for us to invest into technologies and how we can potentially look at ways to bring down the costs for consumers. I want to turn my attention now to Lauren, right? He's the CEO for Latin America for Nestle, based in Latin America, right? And Nestle launched Generation Regeneration a number of years ago to really support farmers with regenerative agricultural practices. And I know that there are a lot of efforts out there where everyone is trying to work with the smallholder farmers across supply chains to put in place better practices. Is FMC for food, how do you see FMC for food helping and supporting the efforts that are already afoot?
Yeah, first and foremost, we applaud the declaration of the COP presidency, putting the limelight on sustainable agriculture and regenerative food systems, will create momentum. The FMC is also creating momentum with the like-minded organizations. We know that in matters of sustainability, no one alone, there is not one state or one company that can solve the problem alone. So we need to work together. I think the food system approach is absolutely spot on because it involves, of course, the farmers, millions of farmers, the transformers, the distributors, and we should not forget the end consumers. So that's virtually everyone concerned and everyone involved. So yes, we launched Generation Regeneration because and it's important to have in mind that there is no one silver bullet to make the transformation. We are talking many times about smallholders. It's easier with larger farms. Smallholders would tend to be in their late 50s. They will have practiced certain methods for decades. So it's not easy to make the transition and to make the move. And it's obviously a lot easier with the new generation. And you might know that we have a commitment to youth, to raise youth employability, and to bring more opportunities to the youth. We launched that initiative 10 years ago, and we have a commitment to 2030. Agripreneurship is one of the dimensions. Support young agripreneurs make the transformation, to show the way, to lead the way, to create also the generational change that is required to bring the youth to the table is absolutely critical. So we're putting a lot of emphasis, a lot of efforts on that side of the equation, and working with the farmers, generally speaking, in that transition globally, because we supply globally. We are the largest buyer of many commodities, coffee, cocoa. We are a very large buyer of dairy, soy. I can make a long list. It's really critical that we embrace all the dimensions. So there is a lot of emphasis on the financial dimension, and there is a need for microfinancing for people, farmers, smallholders that are sometimes not included in the financial system. Micro-insuring, but there is also a lot of technical assistance. It's not completely obvious what is required from them. We got 4,500 agronomists on the ground, working day in, day out, to let them understand what it takes and start to apply one practice at a time and then start to move the needle. One of the key dimensions is long-term contracting. We took a commitment to supply 20% of our agricultural commodities from regenerative agriculture by 2025, so it's tomorrow. We're already half the way, and we want 50%, so we talk about demand signal, 50% by 2030. We absolutely understand that to achieve that, of course, we need to mobilize all our resources. This is critical for the planet for reasons that have been mentioned by the other panelists. It's essential to our business, and working hand in hand with like-minded companies, with the WEF, in the framework of the COP, will certainly help move the needle, create the acceleration, mobilize resources, and make the impact that is required.
Thank you, Lauren. Dan, if I can turn to you. You're a food manufacturer based in Thailand, right? And we know food is also very much integrated into culture, into the traditions of communities. What excites you most about the FMC for food?
Well, I think thank you for inviting me to speak and to join the First Movers Coalition. I think what's exciting, the most exciting aspect, and also actually the saddest aspect at the moment, is we're at a pivotal time in which we have, we have a meeting point of price and policy at this point. Well, hopefully it'll happen very soon. Policy being, we have, for example, through COP, countries and then now private sector all committing to net zero targets. And then hopefully pricing is going to eventually reach down through the supply chain, through these demand signals, right? Down all the way to the farmer level. Most people don't know, but Southeast Asia, specifically Thailand, we're a net food exporter, obviously, top 10 in the world. But if you think about it, we're probably a net pollution exporter as well. And the reason I say this is if you think of rice, it's 12% of methane. 30% of rice production is from Southeast Asia, which means we probably produce somewhere between 25 to 30 million metric tons of methane a year, right? And so, but now that we've gotten policy to come on board, right? Now we just need pricing to come, and that these signals have to come not just from, I think, the private sector and the consumer, right? And where I agree, the retail is like the gateholder to all this, right? Also government as well, as they set carbon pricing in like in the food sector. For example, in Thailand, we burn agriculture residue of around 20 million metric tons a year, all within the food production system. And that's just Thailand, right? So within the whole region, it's probably more than 100 million metric tons that sends millions of people to the hospital. So I'm not trying to be like all bad news here, but I think as we start getting companies on board with net zero targets, right? We had CP, for example, that's now committed to not buy corn from agriculture residue burning, stubble burning, which is massive, given that corn is a key component for animal feed. And so if you come to Thailand, for example, actually we're just in the burning season. The entire region at the moment is going to be up in smoke. You literally cannot see. It's like one of the most polluted regions in the world from December all the way to April of the year. And that's transboundary too. So you've got Myanmar, you've got Laos, et cetera. And so my hope is, I think, and which is very exciting, is in the next 10 years, because of policy, pricing starts increasing in a way that would allow a trickle-down effect to the farmers. We're actually working on a project now, starting off with a village of around 200 households, where we'll actually buy all the residue that they would typically burn, and then we would then finance like a village biochar concept, where they would then burn it in an emissions-free process, take the biochar, bury it, generate carbon removal certificates, which we would then buy the removal certificates, as well as they would supply us as well, hoping to get our supply chain to net zero. And if that works, Thailand's got probably 20,000 villages that are impacted due to agriculture burning. So I think it's exciting. I think it's just not regenerative, but we need transformative approach to how we're going to transform this industry. Because if you think about hard to abate, I mean, transforming the mindset of the smallholder farmer is probably the biggest challenge, right? Because it's hundreds of millions, if not billions of people that you need to like change their mindset, incentivize them. It's just not about money. When he says, well, I can burn, I can do this, I'm gonna get cancer, I'll use all these pesticides, it's okay as long as I can eat, I can, or buy my latest mobile phone, right? Which is the unfortunate case. But, and then we've just started investing into retail within Europe. And so we hope to be the leading Asian grocery store in the UK, hopefully, in the next 2 years. But interestingly enough, I just want to point out, and I'll just end at this, I think it's super exciting. So there's massive demand for Asian grocery. Okay, so it's a $60 to $70 billion a year grocery market around the world, growing at 10% CAGR. You've got a net adoption of Asian food, but the Asian food system is also one of the most complex systems because it's just not row crops alone, right? You've got row crops like rice, but you've got like herbs, spices, et cetera, within this really complicated food system. And so a lot of people actually don't know that I reckon there's probably about 1 to 2 billion pounds worth of fresh produce air cargoed annually into the UK, right? Air cargoed fresh fruits and vegetable, right? So if you think about carbon emissions. But it's an exciting time, right? It's an exciting time, price and policy.
Thank you, Dan. When we talk about systems transformation, we always look at the 5 areas, markets, and the first movers really seeks to create green markets. Technology, obviously, upfront investments into technologies that can support and bring down the costs will be very critical. Finance, right? And we will be engaging financial players to see how they can also be part of that solution. Culture, we spoke about consumers, we talk about farmers, how we need to also start shifting practices and patterns. And finally, policy, which Dan also alluded to, right? And part of the First Movers Coalition will be to engage with governments to look at how we can put in place the enabling policy frameworks to support companies in this transition journey. So 2 years ago in Glasgow, we launched a First Movers Coalition for Industry, hard-to-abate sectors. Today, the First Movers Coalition for Industry has about 100 companies sign up, $15 billion of purchasing commitments, which is quite significant, 13 governments who are actively involved in working through the policies needed for the industry transition. So my ask or question to this panel, 2 years from now, so today we are launching the First Movers Coalition for Food. Collectively, the companies that have signed up to be the founding partners, they represent $3 trillion in revenue. So that's a very sizable power, purchasing power or revenue power that you collectively represent. 2 years from now, when we meet in Brazil, COP30, what would you like to see happen by then, right? And what is that ambition that you hope this coalition can collectively achieve? So I'll start with, if I may, Mr. Abdullah. If you want to share your thoughts, and then we'll end with Pilar.
Yes, I would say in general, there are a number of things, but probably I will focus on collaboration and knowledge sharing. And I believe there is a lot of know-how that has been built over the years. And it increases now by not only quantity, but rather quality as well. And the challenge, I would think, or the opportunity rather, is making sure that this know-how or knowledge is being shared and available to people. And the natural, I would say, traditional view of it is that the barrier becomes because of competition and so on. But when industry leaders look at it from a way that the more they collaborate, the better it becomes for the industry or for the sector. And when we talk about food in particular, then that gives it another edge, because you develop that on logistic side, you develop that on supply chain side, you develop it from regional perspective, and then at times you bring certain markets to higher levels compared to others. And then this knowledge sharing becomes, I would say, endless. You go to policymakers, you go to investors, appetite for people to further put resource into the area. I would say collaboration is key in this particular, among so many other things, for sure.
Thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, Brazil is a great choice. not only because it's in Latin America, but this is home to one of the most important ecosystems. It's also a major agricultural commodity supplier globally. There is a lot of research and financing in the food sector, large farms. So I hope and I believe we will see that we are on track, that our own commitment, Nestlé, to 20% sourcing of regenerative commodities will be overtaken, and we are talking big volumes, and of course we need to work with partners. And this is what Antoine said at the start, that what looks today more like a sum of pilots will become mainstream, and that we see the scale happening in the marketplace so that we can supply the 20% that we need and the 50% in 2030.
Thank you. Dan?
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to Brazil. I was quite impressed with the president's announcement, I think this morning, where I think I heard him correctly. He said there would be zero deforestation up until 2030 or something, which, wow. So bravo. But I think for me, the most challenging aspect of food, and we've got tens of thousands of farmers in our supply chain just in Thailand alone, is basically price competition. So starting from all the way from retail, right, from the downstream, right, everybody wants to sell for less, right, and that's kind of the core business model of all retailers. And I can say this now since I'm a retailer, but. The problem with that, right, is that you have to squeeze your supply chain upstream. And so I hope that with all these different demand signals come from every stakeholder within the supply chain, it just won't be about price, right? And that we would, within this entire First Movers Coalition, try not to fight on price, right? And move towards more like a resilient and a living wage supply chain, where we don't have to squeeze our farmers and squeeze our stakeholders for the sake of, price competition.
Thank you. And Mr. Ahmed?
Well, I think, first of all, I hope we'll be able to fly to Brazil on sustainable aviation fuel. I think, Emirates is a great airline. They've just done the first trial successfully on A380, so I hope that would be the norm by then. And wherever we come from, heading to Brazil, it will be on SAF. But I think in the context of the coalition here, I think my number one, I would say, wish is for speed. And I think the need for speed is quite critical. We have identified the first 4, I would say, food items that we need to work on very quickly because they represent, the majority of emissions, etc. But the second horizon is very important in terms of, palm oil and other commodities. And I would hope that we'd have enough speed that by the time we congregate in Brazil, we would be at the third horizon and we would be tackling food waste. There are 800 million people who sleep hungry every year, but we have enough food to feed 1.5, 2 billion people. It just goes to waste. And in this context, there is plenty of, I would say, technology and methods that allows us today to tackle food waste in a structured manner and helps to alleviate sort of these unnecessary, I would say, dislocation of markets that we see. And I'll give you a small example. We do every year like a global competition for startups in relevant sectors to measure food in business. And this year we're focused on clean tech and climate tech. And we got fantastic startups from all over the world, from Finland, US, UK. And one of the winners was a food waste piece of great tech that can be installed anywhere. And essentially it's like this amazing reverse photosynthesis machine. Takes all the food waste and generates energy, water, and compost. So my hope is by the time we congregate in Brazil, we have completely achieved Horizon 1 of the coalition and well advanced to tackle Horizons 2 and 3.
Thank you. And Pilar?
Yeah, so Brazil is certainly the right country. On Monday this week, Cargill announced an accelerated commitment to eliminate deforestation from Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. So certainly the criticality of the country is very close to our company's sustainability strategy. I would say I echo many of the comments around collaboration and partnership and support, but I would say technology. I mean, you also called it out. 800 million people go to sleep hungry every day. And my hope and aspiration is that in 2 years, that number comes down by half. We know it's impossible. We know it's going to be super challenging. But I think if we work very hard and we collaborate, hopefully that number is, again, half or less. Because it is really challenging to see that, again, we all have food. And there's plenty of food outside as we were coming into this event. But not everybody has the benefit and the opportunity to have food that is available and nutritious and healthy for them. And finally, I would say collaboration between the private sector, the public sector, and even in a pre-competitive way as an industry. And technologies that are new to the world that are not developed at scale. And just a minor example to close the conversation, we are in the process of moving a vessel full of commodities from Brazil into Europe, powered by wind. And that's an innovative solution that 2.5 years ago we said that's not even possible, and it is a reality today. So I think the question is, how can we develop these type of solutions that can help us in decarbonize not only the food, but the transportation sectors as well? That is my dream and hope.
Thank you. I would like to invite you to join me in thanking the panelists. Thank you. And I also want to take this opportunity to thank all the people who have worked behind the scenes, including Bain, our knowledge partner, to make this moment possible. And also that there's going to be a lot more work coming up, right? So we'll need to get going, right? And hopefully when we meet in Brazil, we can actually check off and say that we've not only achieved what we've committed to today, but maybe we've even exceeded our expectations. So thank you all, and thank you again. Thank you.